Jai Swaminarayan. Today we are reading Loyā 16 of the Vachanamrut. This passage is titled, Worldly Desires Becoming Blunt and Uprooted. Let's dive straight into it. After the evening Arti on Magshar-Vadhi the 14th, Samvat 1877, or the 3rd of January 1821, Sriji Maharaj was sitting on a large decorated cot in Surya Khachar's Darbar in Loyā. He was wearing a white case and a warm red dagli. He had also tied a white feto around his head and had tied a bokani with another white feto. At that time, an assembly of Paramhansas as well as devotees from various places had gathered before him. Thereupon Sriji Maharaj said, "May the Paramhansas please engage in a question-answer session." So saying, he himself asked the question, "What are the characteristics of one whose worldly desires have not become blunt, one whose worldly desires have become blunt, and one whose worldly desires have been completely uprooted?" Muktanand Swami began to answer the question, but could not reply satisfactorily. So Sriji Maharaj said, "The vrittis, the thought force of the indriyas, the sense organs of one whose worldly desires have not become blunt, cling to the vishayas, the sense objects. In fact, they cannot be dislodged even by a thought process. In comparison, the vrittis of one whose worldly desires have become blunt do not enter the vishayas immediately. If they were to enter the vishayas, and they were to attempt to withdraw them, they would withdraw instantly. They would not remain attached to the vishayas. However, a person whose worldly desires have become completely uprooted is oblivious to the vishayas during the waking state, just as they are during the state of deep sleep. They would regard all pleasant and unpleasant vishayas as equal and would behave as one who is gunatit, beyond the three gunas of tamas, rajas, and sattva, darkness, passion, and purity." Then Gopalanand Swami asked, "One's worldly desires may have become blunt, but what is the reason for them not being removed from their roots?" The Maharaj explained, "The answer is that if a person has perfectly imbibed the following four qualities, then their worldly desires would become uprooted. Jnana, knowing wisdom, in the form of detachment. Oh, sorry, I skipped a line. Jnana, in the form of knowledge of the Atma, the true self. Vairagya, in the form of detachment from all things that have evolved out of Prakriti, nature. Dharma, righteous duty, in the form of brahmacharya, which is a kind of word that is often translated to celibacy, but it's much more spiritual than that, and just mere abstinence. It also includes thought, word, and deed, basically refraining from releasing any sort of sexual energy so that it can be used for vitality, etc. And bhakti, loving devotion, coupled with the knowledge of God's glory. Any deficiency in these four qualities leads to a proportional deficiency in uprooting one's worldly desires." Having given the reply, Sriji Maharaj said, "Now allow me to ask a question. Countless spiritual endeavors have been prescribed for a spiritual aspirant to perform in order to attain God. Out of all of them, by which one powerful endeavor can all flaws be eradicated and all virtues be acquired?" The Paramhansas could not answer the question, so Sriji Maharaj revealed, "If one has bhakti, loving devotion, coupled with the knowledge of God's countless powers, as described by Kapil Dev to Devahuti in Vad bhayad vati vatoyam suryas tapati mad bhayat, which is from the Srimad Bhagavat, 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 42nd verse, which means, it is by fear of me that the wind, Vayu, blows, Surya, i.e. the sun, shines, Indra, i.e. the clouds, rains, Agni, i.e. fire, burns, and death, i.e. Yam, devours the living. Then all of one's flaws would be eradicated. Moreover, even if one does not possess Jnana, Vairagya, and Dharma, one still attains them. Thus, this spiritual endeavor is the best of all. Then Sriji Maharaj asked another question. A deceitful person who is also clever cunningly conceals their deceitfulness. Please explain how such a person's deceitfulness can be recognized. Brahmanand Swami answered, such a person can be recognized by the fact that they keep the company of someone who is an antagonist of satsang, of true spiritual association, and who speaks ill of the sant, the saint, and God. Besides this, such a person cannot be known by any other means. Sriji Maharaj accepted the answer, but questioned further. Yes, but how can such a person be recognized if they do not keep the company of such people? Brahmanand Swami then added, his deceitfulness would be exposed in times of adverse circumstances. Sriji Maharaj confirmed, that is the correct answer to the question. Thereafter, Sriji Maharaj asked another question. Which single fault transforms all of a person's virtues to faults? Sripat Devananant. I think I added another syllable in that accidentally. Sripat Devanand Swami replied, if someone spites a devotee of God, then all of their virtues becomes as good as faults. Sriji Maharaj clarified, that is true, but I had another answer in mind. A person may be well endowed with each and every virtue, but if they believe God to be formless, not possessing a definite form, then that is a grave flaw, so much so that because of this flaw, all of their virtues become flaws. Thereafter, Sriji Maharaj asked, why does one perceive faults in a sadhu, in a spiritual renunciant, in a monk? The Paramahansas attempted to answer the question, but were unable to do so satisfactorily. So Sriji Maharaj answered the question himself. An egotist perceives faults in a sadhu. This is because it is the very nature of someone who is egotistical, that if someone praises them, even though that person may have 100 faults, they would overlook them and would instead greatly highlight a single virtue. Conversely, if a person does not praise them, then even though that person may have 100 virtues, they would overlook all of them and highlight an utterly insignificant fault. Consequently, they would initially spite that person mentally, then verbally, and ultimately physically as well. Thus, egotism is a grave vice. However, do not think that only the shrewd are egotistical and the naive are not. In actual fact, the naive are more egotistical than the shrewd. Thereupon Muktanand Swami asked, Maharaj, how can egotism be eradicated? Sriji Maharaj explained, they who thoroughly realize the glory of God cannot be egotistical. Look at Uddhavji, how wise he was. He was proficient in the Niti Shatak and had physical characteristics like that of a king. Yet because he had understood the glory of God, he put aside his self-importance upon seeing the gopis' love for God, and prayed, "May I become a tree, a vine, a blade of grass, or maybe even a shrub, anything that has been touched by the dust from the feet of the gopis," who were the milk maidens of Vrindavan. Tulsidas has also said, "Tulasi jake mukhan se bhule nikase ram dhake bhagki paheniya mere tanki cham." That is, even if someone utters the name of God unintentionally, a person who realized God's glory would make shoes from their own skin and offer them to that person. Wow, I wasn't expecting that translation. If that is so, would they harbor any egotism before a devotee of God who constantly engages themselves in worship and in chanting the name of God, who bows down to God and who realizes the glory of God? Certainly not. Thus, egotism is eradicated when one realizes the glory of God. But without understanding the glory of God, egotism simply cannot be eradicated. Therefore, whosoever wishes to eradicate egotism should realize the glory of God and the Sant, the saint. Thank you for listening to this 124th discourse of Sriji Maharaj in this Loyā, passage 16 section of the Vachanāmrut. Jai Swaminarayan.